It's Monday morning. Getting started. Got my Bible. Waiting to see who's on. Another day. All right. We've got some people. Good morning. Always excited to see people getting on here. Good morning, Adam and John and Martha and Amanda. Good. Good morning, good morning, good morning. That's what I'm reading here. All right. Phyllis, good morning. Brad, good morning. All right. Shanna, good morning. Shanna's still with me after all this time. There were some people that were with me in the beginning, Shanna, that are no longer with me. But thank you, Pat. But Shanna is still with me. Been with me since I think day one. Maybe day two, day three, but she's been there. So cool. All right, so let me give you a little rundown of how my week's gonna look this week. Sandy and Nancy are back. Good morning. Lori, where'd who go? Oh, the people? Yeah, they'll be back. They'll be back. They're still on my Facebook feed. They'll be back. Good morning, Estelle. All right, so let me tell you about how my week's gonna go. Again, every once in a while we got some things that come up. Currently, today, the thing that is coming up is it is my anniversary today. And so 18 years of marriage, 18 years ago today, we had a wedding and it snowed that day. So we are gonna go hang out in San Diego tonight, and I don't know if I'll be able to be on tomorrow morning. So we'll see. So if you guys want to give it a shot, you know how that went last time when I went to Chicago. So I can't promise you that I'll be on, but if I am on, we'll just see if anybody's here. I do this so early that there's pretty much 0% chance that my wife will be awake at this time. So, you know, I could break away possibly, but it all just depends on where I can set up. And then later in the week, Friday and Saturday, I'm headed to Utah to play music at a youth camp. Believe it or not, they let a 40-year-old guy play music at a youth camp. So as long as they still let me do that, I still am going to do it. So Friday I'll be driving. I think that there's pretty much no chance that I'll be able to be live. Saturday it's again iffy. So we're gonna have kind of a short week, very likely. I may try to jump in. I'd still like to do it. I like the idea of doing these things when I'm not in my office. I like the idea of taking it and doing it in other places. But we'll see. I mean, it was such a good idea. Good morning, Darren. It was such a good idea when I did it in Chicago, and it never happened. I just couldn't find a place to break away where I didn't feel weird about setting up and talking to my phone while there's people walking around. So we'll see. So maybe not tomorrow, probably not Friday, maybe not Saturday. So, but we have today, right? And that's what we're here for. Mark chapter 3. Good news is even if I'm not on here, you still have a Bible, and you can still get up and you can still spend time in it. Maybe you know somebody who's part of this, and you guys could just connect and say, hey, let's just read a little something and see what God says to us. All right. Good morning, Carrie Ann. All right, here we go. Good morning, Mom. Chapter 3 of the book of Mark. We're going to pick up there. Let's pray, get started. I'm planning on getting through verse 21 today. Let's pray. Lord, I do thank you that you give us this time in the morning. I thank you, always surprise every single day that there are people here with me that keep coming along in this journey. Lord, I'm encouraged by them. I trust they're encouraged by me. I just pray that you just keep us on this path, that you be growing us, that you be working us in the way that we are to grow and to change, and that over time we could just see that our time in the Word in the morning was significant in our lives. We ask in Jesus' name, amen. All right, guys, you ready? Here we go. So Jesus, up to this point, in the book of Mark, we started over. If you've been with us in Matthew, we started over in the book of Mark. Mark just tells tells the story of Jesus from a slightly different perspective, a different angle. And that's how Luke will do, and that's what John will do, just giving us their take on this whole thing. Mark is giving us the point of view of Jesus the servant, very action-packed, very short. He's given us a short account of the life of Jesus, and it's only 16 chapters, and he loves to just show how Jesus' activity. And here, as we get into chapter 3, Jesus has already done a lot of healing. One of the things that I'm noticing about Mark is that Mark is bringing up demonic activity quite a bit, which is interesting to me, because really a lot of scripture kind of doesn't put a lot of energy and focus on demonic activity. But Mark, when he's talking about the things that Jesus is doing, is really kind of interacting with the spiritual realm. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in our world even today, and we don't typically, I don't anyway, certain circles do, and honestly some of those circles get a little weird sometimes, but most of the people that I spend time with, even whether it's ministry or all that, when things are going down, we don't instantly just kind of start talking about angels and demons. We just don't go there. I think that there's more mystery than there is knowledge on a lot of that stuff, and it gets kind of mystical, and people kind of fill in the blanks with some weirdness sometimes. Hey, look, my wife's on. Sandy's on. Happy anniversary. So let's get going. So here Jesus is famous. He's been doing this work, healing. And then it says in verse 1 of chapter 3, again he entered the synagogue. This is Jesus's practice. He would go into the synagogues and he would preach on a regular basis. The synagogues were basically the place of, within Judaism, these were the places of teaching and preaching, and their format was different than what we would have in our typical churches today. But if there would be a traveling, excuse me, if there would be a traveling rabbi who would be coming through the community, they would open up the opportunity for them to preach and teach in those places. And Jesus took advantage of that. We saw also Paul the Apostle took advantage of that for a season until they really recognized that there was this massive gap between Christianity and Judaism and what Jesus was taking people, the direction Jesus and Paul and the disciples were taking people, and where Judaism was going as well. And so Jesus would come and preach in the synagogues. Here he does that again in chapter 3. And a man was there with a withered hand. And they watched Jesus to see whether he would heal him on the Sabbath so that they might accuse him. One of the things that is common, I've been in ministry a long time. One of the things that is common is we look at ministries, we look at churches, and we go in with a critical attitude right from the start. We look for ways to accuse right away. You know, we go in and we judge harshly. Now, there's something to be said for weighing the preacher against the scriptures and really trying to come to grips with, is what he's saying true? We want to dig through the word. We want to understand it. But we need to be careful that we don't go in to somebody who's seeking to do the work of God and instantly seek to accuse. Look for what they're doing wrong. That tends to be what is very common. Maybe you go to a new church. I know people who love their church. They love their pastor. They love what's going on there. And then they'll travel somewhere else and they'll visit another church. And it just seems like most often when they come back and they tell you about their experience at the other church, they just tell you all the things that weren't as good as the one that they are currently at. Oh, the music wasn't as good. The pastor wasn't as funny. You wouldn't believe the parking. It was terrible. You know, the children's ministry was so, subpar. They have all these kind of critiques about it. As a matter of fact, even as Jesus is he's getting famous, his name is going out, the more successful a pastor or preacher is, the more criticism they'll get. The more people will want to pick them apart. They'll get invited onto Larry King or The Morning Show, and then they'll get on there, and what happens on those shows is those guys want to corner them, and they want to pick them apart publicly. So then what happens when they pick them apart is then you got religious people all over the world like watching that episode, and they want to see where this guy fails. Does he say the things I want him to say? Does he do the things I want him to do? who cares about reading his book and finding out exactly what he says? I want to know what he said on Larry King. I want to know what he got in this. Did he have a 30-second meltdown? He said the wrong thing at the wrong time so that I can accuse him. We so often, oh man, do I go here? I'm just going to keep it vague. There are some very famous guys out there in Christian realms, famous guys. Some of them are out there. Some of them are off. But some of them are not as off as we like to think they are. They're out there, they're trying their best, and it's just kind of exploding. I mean, they've got a huge following, and they're just good at public speaking, and so God has used. Well, I don't know if some of you argue whether or not God has used them, but they have this massive following. And what I found was, in my years of ministry, is that there are a lot of people. Whenever there's these guys in the spotlight, there are a lot of people who will tell you all the things that is wrong with their preaching, with their message, with their public ministry, everything about it. There's a lot of Christians out there, religious people, who will tell you what's wrong with what they do. But what I found was very, very few of those with a harsh critique of these men who are doing these works have actually ever listened to a sermon by the person they're critiquing. And if they have, it's not been more than one or two. They've not read their books. But they're very willing to speak out and criticize them. Now, I understand. I understand why we do it. We do it because we want to, we don't want to misrepresent God. And there are people out there who are saying things that are a little off. But the whole point here is that we just got to be careful that when somebody is stepping out to do a ministry, to serve, to communicate the truths of God, that we don't go into it just looking to tear them down. We got to be careful. There's guys that I love that I've heard critiqued harshly. And then there's guys that I don't know as much about. There are some guys that I've heard, people tear them apart. And I'm just like, you know what? Before I jump on that bandwagon, I'm going to listen to what they say. And then I'll listen to a few of their messages. Not the Larry King corner, get them in the corner and see how they react. But truly, listen to the message that they're speaking. And what I have found is oftentimes, the message that they're speaking is good. It's needed. It's a good word. Now, do they probably have some things off? Yeah, they probably do. So do I. So we just need to be careful. These guys are coming to the synagogue. Jesus is teaching. They see there's a man there with a withered hand. Very likely he's a plant. They put him there to see what Jesus would do. They actually invited him because they knew what Jesus would do already. And so they invite him in, and then they're just looking for an opportunity to accuse Jesus. And they want to know, will he heal this man on the Sabbath? And he said to the man, Jesus says, to the man with the withered hand, come here. And he said to them, is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do harm, to save life or to kill? But they were silent. So Jesus knows what's going on. And he invites this man. He says, come here, this man with the withered hand. Here's one of the things that I like about this. I feel like this withered hand thing is pretty minor compared to so many of the other miracles that Jesus has done. So Jesus is not passing this man by, even though he's got a withered hand. I mean, he's healed lepers. He's cast out demons. He will raise the dead. He will make blind people so that they can see. But this man's he's got a withered hand. He can probably do 99% of the stuff that everybody else can do. He's probably not as hindered as everyone else. But they know, we got this guy, this man with the withered hand. And Jesus could easily say, you know what, this isn't worth it. This isn't worth the fight. But Jesus is going to make a point here, and he's going to show love here. And so knowing what's going on, he says, is it lawful to do good or to do evil on the Sabbath day? Is it lawful for me to do good? Listen, evil never takes a break, right? Evil doesn't rest on the Sabbath. People still get sick on the Sabbath. People still die on the Sabbath. People out in the world who are living for evil, thieves still steal on the Sabbath. Murderers still kill on the Sabbath. And so here he's like, are we truly, if somebody's in pain, if somebody's hurting, if somebody needs hospital care, if somebody is having an emergency, isn't it right to help them on the Sabbath day? Is our religious practice going to override our love for people, our care for people? But they were silent. They have no answer. Verse 5, and he looked around at them with anger, grieved at their hardness of heart. And he said to the man, stretch out your hand. Jesus is not hindered. He's not hindered by them. He's not hindered by the fact that their hearts are completely wrong, that they don't actually even care for the man who's about to be healed. It's crazy that they actually know he can and will heal them, and yet they still don't recognize that he should have some authority from God because he's doing things that no one else can do. I find that amazing. They know he has the power to heal, and yet they won't listen to his teachings about how the Sabbath ought to operate. I find that amazing. He stretched it out, and his hand was restored. And the Pharisees went out and immediately held counsel with the Herodians against him, how to destroy him. So check this out. So the Herodians were a political group that was completely on the other side of the table from the Pharisees. These guys were not, they didn't work together on anything. But the Pharisees realized that they were just, bested by Jesus as they were gonna set him up. They were gonna have cause to accuse him, and yet he still healed, and he publicly did it in a way that made them look like the bad guys. So what did they do? They went out and they plotted with the Herodians. They went and found the people that they had nothing in common with except for the fact that they were against Jesus, and they plotted together because they wanted to destroy Jesus. How do we take this guy out? We agreed together we don't want Jesus in the picture. Here we go, verse 7. We're going to kind of blast through this section. This is just speaking about how his fame is spreading. Jesus withdrew with his disciples to the sea, and a great crowd followed him from Galilee to Judea and Jerusalem and Idumea and from beyond the Jordan and from around Tyre and Sidon. When the great crowd heard all that he was doing, they came to him, and he told his disciples to have a boat ready for him because of the crowd, lest they crush him, for he had healed many, so that all who had diseases pressed around him to touch him. And whenever the unclean spirits saw him, they fell down before him, and they cried out, "You are the Son of God." And he strictly ordered them not to make him known. So Jesus is getting more and more famous. He's just continuing to do ministry with them. He's got his disciples with him. You guys hearing the rain? It never rains in San Diego. We're getting a rainstorm right now. Probably last 10 minutes. We'll see. But he's getting more famous, more and more famous. He's continuing to do ministry to the people that are coming, pressing in, and he's by the sea. He tells the disciples, keep a boat ready. The crowds are coming. The work is happening. The demons are being cast out. All of the demons are looking to scream out who he is. The demons they're not missing it. The devil knows who Jesus is. The demons know who Jesus is. The demons are afraid of Jesus. I don't know if that's blocking out my voice a lot. I'm trying to get a little bit louder over the sound of the awesome rain. But he orders the demons to keep quiet. He doesn't need the endorsement of demons. Jesus doesn't need the endorsement of demons. So he tells them, shut up. He's done that multiple times already. Interesting, the talks of demons. Verse 13, I want to get through this section today before we end. And he went up to the mountain, or up on the mountain, and he called him those whom he desired, and they came to him. And he appointed 12, whom he also named apostles, so that they might be with him, and he might send them out to preach, and have authority to cast out demons. And he appointed 12, Simon, to whom he gave the name Peter, James, the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, and James, to whom he gave the names, uh, sons of thunder, but there's a different word there that I don't know how to pronounce. Verse 18, Andrew and Philip and Bartholomew and Matthew and Thomas and James the son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus and Simon the Zealot and Judas Iscariot who betrayed him. So Jesus begins to gather his disciples, and I always love to see his group of disciples, his list of disciples. I'm always interested in this because here's the deal. There's a website. I've followed it for years back in the day when I was not in full-time ministry, and it's a website that helps guys like me who feel called to ministry find churches that need guys like me to help them out. And so, it's just a church staffing website. And so many of the positions, so many of the jobs that are out there, I don't qualify for them. I can't do them. You could be a youth pastor, but we want a master's degree in Bible studies and all these, crazy. We want 5 to 7 years of experience leading a group of 100 or more people. They've got all of these qualifications that I don't measure up to. And I can't make most of those lists. Many of those churches, I can't be part of those types of ministries. What I love about Jesus and his calling is like, man, I could have made this list. I feel like I could have been one of these guys. You could have made this list. On this list, we have people that they're not going to get hired at any church anywhere near here. Anyway, I mean, your church isn't going to look twice at these guys. My church most often probably wouldn't look twice at these guys. Who do you have? You have Peter. Peter's always the top of the list. He's always the first guy. He's kind of the leader of the group. But who is Peter? He's a fisherman. He's a fisherman that's a sinner, and he knows he's a sinner. When Jesus called him, he said, Jesus, get away from me. I'm a sinner. You don't understand. Now, when I hear that, I think with Peter, he didn't say I'm a sinner because of how humble he was. He said he was a sinner. This is my take on the whole thing. He said he was a sinner because when he realized who Jesus was, he thought, oh man, bad things. I cannot be around somebody this good, this holy, this righteous. And in his mind, instantly, all of the sin, the specific things he had done wrong were coming into his mind. And he started to freak out a little bit. He started to realize, I am not good enough. I'm not good. He's the one who denies Jesus 3 times. As Jesus is dying on a cross for his sins. And here Peter is just like, I don't even know him. I don't want to have anything to do with him. I need to keep my distance. This is the leader of the pack. This is the first guy. So we have Peter. We got James and John always on the list, at the top of the list. James and John. Jesus gave them the nickname Sons of Thunder. Sons of Thunder. These guys were fiery personalities. When people weren't listening to Jesus and he's preaching, they're just like, Jesus, can we call fire down from heaven and burn them up just like Elijah did in the Old Testament? And Jesus is like, dude, you guys do not know the heart of God towards these people. You guys are missing it. They had this just fiery personalities. They were the ones, they were kind of in it kind of for themselves. They wanted to be the best. They were competitive with one another. John was competitive with Peter, just wanting to, he writes a gospel, and he's the one who calls Peter out more than the other gospels. The other gospels will say, well, one of the disciples did this bad thing, and John will say, yeah, Peter was the one who did it. When they were running to the tomb, John likes to make it known, like, hey, they were running to the tomb, and John won the race. John got there first. There's this competition. There's this self-serving attitude. There's this fiery temper tantrum personalities that James and John have, but they're on the list. They're the ones Jesus chose. What about Thomas? You got Thomas on the list. Thomas is the one, man. He's famous for doubting. You guys have heard of doubting Thomas. He's the one when Jesus showed up and he was resurrected and Thomas didn't see it, and all 10 of the leftover disciples told Thomas, hey, we've seen Jesus. And Thomas is like, no, you didn't. I don't believe you did. Thomas is famous for doubting, but he's on that list. Man, we got James the Less. James, the son of Alphaeus. He's known as James the Less. The reason why he's known as James the Less is because he didn't say anything. Nobody knows anything about him. He didn't teach anything. He didn't, he's so insignificant. Some of us, right? Some of you guys you feel that way. You feel like, man, I wouldn't have made the list. I don't have a fiery personality. I don't press in. I'm not even a doubter. I'm just in the background constantly. Yeah, he made the list. James the Less didn't do anything. Nothing of value. I'm looking to see. We got Matthew. We've talked about Matthew. Matthew, the tax collector. Matthew was the guy who was collecting money from his own people to give it to the Romans, the people who had oppressed them, the people who were ruling over them. Matthew's in this crew. Then you've got another guy. You got Simon the Zealot. The Zealots were a whole radical group of people who were really out there to create chaos against the Romans. So you've got Matthew the tax collector who's collecting for the Romans, a hated occupation. Then you've got Simon the Zealot who's all about stirring up chaos to overthrow the Romans and to these guys were political activists. We're gonna blow up clinics and do whatever we can to push out the Romans. And so you have these two radically opposing people, both on Jesus' list. Jesus puts them together. So I think that's amazing. I think the people, like when I read Jesus' list of disciples, I say, man, I probably could have made that list. I don't have the qualifications for most churches. I don't have the qualifications for most ministries that are out there that would seek to put me on their list, but I feel like I could have made Jesus' list. Because here's the thing, Jesus' list isn't about what you've achieved. It's not about the fact that you have the right personality. It's not your education, it's not your work ethic, it's not your outspokenness. Jesus' list is based on Jesus. Jesus says, I'll empower you. I'll give you everything you need to do it. I'll call you. I'll tell you what to do. I'll lead you. I will do the work. But then also on that list is Judas Iscariot. Judas, always at the bottom of the list every time. The betrayer. And listen, there's a whole lot of theological implications on Judas being on that list, because here's the thing. Jesus picked Judas. I'm not going to go into the details on that. I'm just going to let that sit in your mind and mess with you until we get to the points where we start really unpacking that. Probably not till we get to the book of John. All right. But then let's finish up right here. Then he went home, and the crowds gathered again so that they could not even eat. And when his family heard it, they went out to seize him, and they were saying, he is out of his mind. And now, I love this. Jesus has begun his ministry. We're 3 chapters in. Jesus has begun doing the work that he's doing. And his family, the people closest to him, the people who know him best, very short time into his ministry, they're saying, he's out of his mind. He's crazy. Jesus is crazy. He's surrounding himself with a bunch of misfits. He's surrounding himself with a bunch of rejects. And he's preaching, and crowds are coming, and man, everybody's talking that he has power over demons, and everybody's talking that he's healing and doing these things that can't be done. And they're saying he's out of his mind. He can't even eat, it says. He's so busy doing the things that are in front of him, he doesn't even have time to eat. And they're saying he's crazy. I have a friend that gave me this insight, my friend Daniel. And he gave me this insight a long time ago as God was kind of showing him some things. He said, man, when you truly start walking after God the way that he is calling you to walk after him, Christians will start looking at you like you're crazy. There will come a point when you truly start living for God the way that he truly is calling you to live for him. Christians will start looking at you like you're crazy. It's like, tone it down, man. Tone it down, back up a little bit. You're getting a little bit crazy. I really, and here's the thing. You don't have to be the person that Christians are considering crazy, but truly, as you begin to press into Jesus and you begin to realize the doors that he's opening for you, the opportunities that are there. My friend, when he had told me this, when he had made this statement, he said, what he was seeing was it was as if God was opening his eyes to the fact that every encounter was a divine encounter. Every situation was God orchestrated, and he began to see things as if that the cashier at the grocery store was not just a random occurrence, but truly that God had orchestrated that quick little event, and he began to kind of take advantage of it. He's just like, you know what, I'm going to seek opportunity to minister, to bless, to encourage, to speak to the cashier, or somebody, maybe somebody randomly stops by your house, or you get a phone call, or whatever those types of things are. He began to see God is moving through all of these things, and he began to take advantage of them. And he's just like, man, these are crazy things are happening. People are responding in ways that I never expected them to respond when I opened up my mouth, or when I began to encourage them, or when I began to pray for them, or I began to give as God led me to give. Like that, these little things within my heart that maybe it's just this passing thought of, you know what, I really should give to that cause, or maybe I should buy this person dinner. And he began to say, maybe those aren't just random, maybe that's God's voice speaking to me. And he began to respond to them. He began to do them as he felt like God was leading him to do it. And he said, man, I just started seeing amazing things happen around me. But at the same time, what he found was oftentimes the Christians, the religious people around him, the church folks, the people that had encouraged him in the Lord previous, were now saying, man, you're getting a little extreme. You're getting a little out there. You're making me a little bit uncomfortable. I think that's what happened with Jesus. As he'd spent 30 years before he really began his public ministry. And then when he started his public ministry, it was pedal to the metal, full speed. He was not slowing down, and he was doing all that God gave him to do. And man, even his family considered that he was crazy. I love that. I hope that's encouraging to you, not discouraging. Don't feel like, man, I got to act like I'm crazy. No, you don't. All you got to do, just listen to God, but don't be surprised if, as you're taking those steps of faith, there's story after story of those who feel called into missions overseas. I've got a good friend who was a great student in high school, a student, and she was really into her education. She was really smart, and as God was getting a hold of her heart in her high school years, she was about to graduate high school, and she felt like God was not calling her to go to college, which everybody was like, you're crazy. You're so good at school. You're so smart. You could do so much. But what did she do instead? She went to Uganda for a year, and she just poured into this ministry in Uganda, and Uganda wrecked her. I mean, she began to see poverty. She began to see God doing things that she's never seen him do in the local churches of her city in the United States. And then she comes back, and she just continues to serve God. She just continues to keep what God has done. Now, that isn't to say that God's not going to call her to continue going to school, but God just got a hold of her heart. But I tell you what, man, when she was going to Uganda, she had Christian family and friends around her that were telling her, I don't think that's for you. Uganda's not your thing. Your thing is college. And obviously, I mean, your track record says the next step is college. And I would never discourage college. But for her, God said Uganda, and people said you're crazy. So just wanted to encourage you guys in that. I don't know about tomorrow. I wish I could promise that I was going to be here tomorrow. I don't know where we're going to be, what we're going to be doing. If you want to gamble and get up and see if I'm on, I would love to have you guys on if I'm there. But if not, for sure, I will be back on Wednesday. But hey, if I'm on tomorrow, you're going to miss it, because I'm just going to carry on with whatever's next. We're going to finish chapter 3 tomorrow or the next day. We'll see. God bless you guys. Thank you for joining. Always good. I saw some names on there that I haven't seen on before. And so thank you guys, the new people who've kind of popped in and said hello. Loved having you guys on. Lori, I saw you. I don't know if you're still on there. Shauna, saw you on there. So cool. Well, God bless you guys. I'm going to go back home. I don't usually do much work on Mondays, so I'm going to go back home. God bless you guys. Thank you, Shannon. She says happy anniversary. Later. Thank you, Brenda. I remember. Yes, it was a good day. It was a snowy, cold, beautiful day. Awesome. We'll see you guys there. Hey, Brenda, say hi to the family for me. Say hi. I've heard Bob's going through some stuff. So just say hi to him for me, and we'll see you guys later.